In the world of WWE, where bright lights shine and deafening cheers fill the arena, not everyone gets to hold on to the spotlight forever. Behind the titles, the glory, and the roar of millions of fans lie countless stories filled with heartbreak and regret. Some superstars seemed destined to become immortal legends, only to spiral into mistakes, tragedy, or self-destruction. Today, Wrestling Sphere takes a look back at the saddest downfalls in WWE history, where the line between triumph and tragedy is often just one step apart. Scott Hall, the tragedy of a fallen legend. We begin this list with a name that still leaves fans with a heavy heart: Scott Hall, better known by his iconic persona, Razor Ramon. No matter which name you remember him by, both bring to mind a once brilliant star in the WWE sky, ultimately dragged down by the shadows of his personal demons. Scott Hall was once seen as a future legend, expected to stand shoulder to shoulder with icons like Hulk Hogan, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, and X-Pac. Not only was he part of their era, but he also belonged to two of the most powerful backstage groups of the time, the NWO and the Clique. Hall wasn't just a founding member. He was the glue that held their rebellious spirit together, the soul behind the backstage revolution that defined WWE in the 90s. With his chiseled physique, smooth in-ring ability, undeniable charisma, and unmatched confidence, Hall quickly made his mark on WWE's main stage. Between 1992 and 1996, he captured the Intercontinental Championship 4 times and became a symbol of ladder match greatness. But behind the curtain, Hall was fighting a far more dangerous opponent, himself. In 1996, Hall left WWE to join WCW, originally hoping for a lighter schedule. In reality, it marked the beginning of a downward spiral. Though he continued to achieve success in WCW, winning titles like the United States Heavyweight Championship, World Television Championship, and multiple tag team championships, it was also the period where his self-destructive habits began to surface. Much of this was rooted in a traumatic incident in 1983, when Hall fatally shot a man outside a nightclub in Orlando. Hall claimed self-defense, using the man's own gun. Though charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, the psychological scars never healed. That memory haunted him like a ghost, leading him deeper into a cycle of addiction and despair. What followed were years of humiliating scandals. Hall was arrested for groping women, assaulting a girlfriend, causing public disturbances, and even attacking a performer while intoxicated. Things hit rock bottom in 2002 when WWE re-signed him, only to fire him 5 months later after his behavior on the infamous plane ride from hell, where he reportedly harassed flight attendants while drunk. Hall tried to bounce back numerous times, working for ECW, NJPW, TNA, and other promotions. But the pattern was the same: he'd relapse, lose control, and get released. WWE even funded his rehab multiple times, yet each attempt ended with deeper addiction. In 2010, Hall overdosed on a dangerous mix of opioids and benzodiazepines. Friends like Kevin Nash, X-Pac, and Diamond Dallas Page tried to save him, even taking him into their homes to help him recover. But when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, isolation pushed Hall further into loneliness and relapse. By the time Hall was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for a second time in 2021, this time as a member of the NWO, his health had visibly declined. According to X-Pac, Hall collapsed at a bar the night before the ceremony, a tragic signal that the end was near. In March 2022, Scott Hall passed away at age 63 after suffering 3 consecutive heart attacks and being placed on life support. WWE honored him with a memorial attended by some of the biggest names in wrestling, a final tribute to a man who once soared to greatness, but never managed to conquer the demons within. Ric Flair, the legend who destroyed himself. Next on the list is a name that stands as an undeniable icon in wrestling history: Ric Flair. But behind all the glitz and glory lies a life so full of controversy that many of his peers openly refused to work with him. Flair was once the gold standard of success. He wrestled for every major promotion, from Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW to WWE and TNA. With 16 recognized world title reigns, Ric Flair set a benchmark that seems nearly untouchable. He was the first to achieve the Triple Crown in both WCW and WWE and was inducted into multiple Halls of Fame, including twice into the WWE Hall of Fame. But his glittering career sharply contrasted with his chaotic personal life. Even at his peak, Flair was infamous for living recklessly and often crossing ethical lines. One example was his use of racial slurs toward Teddy Long, for which he faced no consequences. Another was his feud with Shane Douglas, originally just a scripted storyline, which Flair turned personal by publicly accusing Douglas of steroid abuse on national television. Things escalated in 2002 with the now infamous plane ride from hell. Flair was accused of exposing himself, wearing nothing but his signature robe, and sexually harassing flight attendant Heidi Doyle. She claimed he forced her to touch his genitals. Though the case was settled out of court, multiple witnesses, including Jim Ross and Tommy Dreamer, confirmed that the incident occurred. Yet Flair faced no official discipline. That lack of accountability only fueled his downward spiral. Flair has been married 4 times, all ending in divorce. The fallout cost him millions in alimony and settlements. On top of that, he faced multiple arrests for charges ranging from assault and domestic violence to harassment and reckless driving. By the year 2000, he had reportedly been stopped by police 143 times for speeding alone. In 2008, the IRS pursued him for hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes in North Carolina. By 2010, during an attempted comeback in TNA, Flair was sued by Ring of Honor for breach of contract, demanding $40,000 in damages. Perhaps most shocking of all, the company Highspots revealed that Flair once used the NWA World Championship belt, the physical title itself, as collateral for a personal debt. In 2011, Highspots filed for a warrant after Flair failed to pay back the loan. From being one of wrestling's most celebrated superstars, Ric Flair gradually became someone people in the business kept at arm's length. His lack of control, broken relationships, and disregard for consequences led many, especially younger talent, to avoid working with him entirely. Ric Flair remains a legend, that much is certain. But rather than becoming a role model like Hulk Hogan or Shawn Michaels, he stands as a cautionary tale. That glory alone isn't enough if you can't keep yourself together in the spotlight. China, the ninth wonder and a fall with no end. We used to call it China's great downfall, but in truth, it wasn't just a single fall. It was a lifetime of heartbreak, a slow unraveling of pain, written by Joanie Laurer herself, in scars, silence, and sorrow. Joanie's life didn't begin with kindness. Her childhood was a storm she never escaped. She endured inappropriate behavior from a teacher in 7th grade, was kicked out by her mother at 16, lost contact with her family, and drifted without a place to call home. She moved to Spain to finish her senior year of high school, then returned to the U.S. to attend the University of Tampa, where she again faced traumatic experiences at the hands of her peers. Still, Joanie pushed through and graduated with a degree in Spanish literature. But when she declined her father's wish for her to join law enforcement, he cut her off entirely. She didn't give up. Joanie threw herself into the world with relentless energy, taking on any job she could: bartender, belly dancer, call center worker, fitness coach, even a part-time singer. Yet none of these paths ever truly fit. That changed in 1995, when she walked into Killer Kowalski's wrestling school, and for the first time, destiny smiled back. It was there that she met Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who helped get her in front of Vince McMahon. Vince hesitated at first, but when he learned WCW was also interested, he signed her on the spot. And that's how Chyna was born. Chyna made her WWE debut in 1997, and there had never been anyone quite like her. Muscular, commanding, with a cool, intimidating presence, she turned heads instantly. She became the first woman to serve as a bodyguard for an all-male wrestling faction, D-Generation X, and went on to make history by winning the Intercontinental Championship, not once, but twice. No woman had done that before. She broke more barriers, becoming the first female entrant in the Royal Rumble and the King of the Ring tournament. She even defeated major names like Triple H, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, and Jeff Jarrett. At one point, she was even in the running to challenge for the WWE Championship, a nearly unthinkable feat for a woman at that time. But even at the height of success, Chyna felt out of place. Criticized for her muscular look, she chose to undergo cosmetic surgeries on her jaw, nose, and chest to transform her image. The result? She became a global symbol of strength and sex appeal. Her 2001 Playboy cover sold over 1 million copies, and her memoir became a New York Times bestseller. But public adoration couldn't heal the emptiness inside. She spent money to soothe emotional wounds, buying luxury cars, high-end lingerie, even a grand piano, all in search of love and validation. But the only relationship that truly mattered to her with Triple H, didn't last. When rumors of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon began to swirl, Chyna's world collapsed. They broke up, and not long after, she left WWE. At the time, she said it was due to backstage tensions. Later, it came out that she had turned down a generous new contract, demanding over $1 million instead. Vince McMahon wanted her to stay, but the figure was simply too much. According to her sister Kathy, WWE was the only place where Joni ever truly felt accepted. Losing that left her completely adrift. She began struggling with substance abuse and entered the adult film industry. She released a controversial tape with X-Pac and eventually acted in explicit films professionally. Chyna attempted a comeback in wrestling, performing briefly in NJPW and TNA. But addiction had already taken its toll. She was arrested for domestic incidents, once allegedly assaulting her partner in front of his child. She made several attempts to end her own life, with pills, alcohol, and self-harm. During a breakdown, she once jumped naked into a fish tank in a panic episode. Over the next decade, she sank deeper into addiction and depression. In April 2016, she was found lifeless in her small California apartment. The cause? An accidental overdose. She passed at the age of 46, quietly and alone. WWE later inducted her into the Hall of Fame alongside D-Generation X. Vince McMahon and others she had worked with expressed heartfelt condolences. But her final farewell told a different story. No family members attended. Just her manager, an ex-boyfriend she hadn't seen in 11 years, and a few people barely connected to her. From a dazzling star to a forgotten shadow. Chyna was once celebrated as the ninth wonder of the world. But in the end, the world left her behind. Mr. Kennedy, from great expectations to a fall beyond repair. If Chyna once basked in glory before plummeting into darkness, Mr. Kennedy's story is a different kind of tragedy. He never even made it to the top step before falling, and that stumble cost him everything, with no way back. For longtime WWE fans, the name Mr. Kennedy stirs up nostalgia. But for the newer generation, it's a name that's barely mentioned, and for good reason. Kennedy disappeared from WWE just as his career was starting to take off. In 2005, Ken Anderson signed with WWE and was sent to Ohio Valley Wrestling for training. After just 6 months of competing, he was called up to the main roster, an astonishing rise. With his booming voice, self-introduction gimmick, and cocky persona, Kennedy grabbed the spotlight instantly. Soon after, he began an undefeated streak and captured the United States Championship. His push had powerful backers. Paul Heyman took a personal interest in his development, and Vince McMahon liked the character so much that he planned to make Kennedy his long-lost son in a major storyline at WrestleMania 24. The biggest moment of his career came in 2007 when he won the Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania 23. That briefcase granted him the right to challenge any champion, anytime. Kennedy's target? The Undertaker, who held the title at the time. But tragedy struck. At a weekend event, Kennedy was diagnosed with a serious triceps tear that would sideline him for 5 to 7 months. WWE quickly pulled the trigger. He lost the briefcase to Edge, who then cashed it in on The Undertaker. The cruel twist. The diagnosis was wrong. Just days later, doctors discovered the injury wasn't nearly as bad as initially thought. But by then, the damage was done. Kennedy had lost the briefcase, the opportunity, and from that moment on, his career began to spiral. Next came the blow of the 2007 steroid scandal, which led to a 1-month suspension. From there, Kennedy was gradually removed from top storylines and relegated to undercard feuds. Even after being drafted to Raw in 2009 with much fanfare, he was suddenly released just a few weeks later. At the time, no one understood why. It wasn't until much later that Kennedy revealed the reason. During a match, he accidentally caused Randy Orton to fall awkwardly, nearly re-injuring his shoulder. Orton was furious, and along with John Cena, who had already voiced doubts about Kennedy, went directly to Vince McMahon to demand his release. And just like that, it was over. A man once seen as the future of WWE was erased from the picture. Kennedy later joined TNA under his real name, Ken Anderson, and had a decent run there. But history repeated itself when he was eventually fired for using performance-enhancing substances. Mr. Kennedy's story wasn't the loudest scandal, nor the most tragic. But it stands as a powerful reminder. Sometimes, a handful of mistakes, both inside and outside the ring, can close the door to greatness forever. He stood on the edge of glory, yet a few missteps sealed his fate. And every time fans hear the name Mr. Kennedy, they can't help but wonder, what if he hadn't been injured? What if that match had gone differently? What if he had kept the briefcase? Would he have become a legend? Tessa Blanchard, when arrogance shattered a promising future. Unlike the tear-filled downfalls on this list, Tessa Blanchard's collapse wasn't caused by tragedy or bad luck, it came from her own arrogance. Born into a legendary wrestling family, Tessa had everything needed for success. Her father, Tully Blanchard, was a key member of the iconic Four Horsemen. Her grandfather, Joe Blanchard, was both a wrestler and a respected promoter. And Tessa herself was undeniably talented, technically sound, visually striking, and bursting with stage presence. She began her pro wrestling career in 2014 and quickly gained attention on the independent scene. After a few appearances in NXT and the 2017 Mae Young Classic, WWE chose not to sign her, a decision that left many puzzled. But Tessa soon proved her worth at Impact Wrestling. In 2020, she made history by becoming the first woman to win the Impact World Championship, defeating several male wrestlers to reach the pinnacle of her career. But just as the spotlight turned her way, the shadows arrived. While still holding the title, multiple colleagues came forward accusing Tessa of backstage bullying, verbal abuse, and racism. These weren't isolated claims. They came from a group that included Chelsea Green, Priscilla Kelly, Renee Michelle, Shauna, Tanya Brooks, and Allison Kay. The most serious accusation came from Allison Kay, who claimed that Tessa once spat in the face of a black female wrestler and used a racial slur during a match in Japan. Tessa denied everything, but the damage was done. The trust was gone. In June 2020, still the reigning champion, she was released by Impact Wrestling after repeatedly failing to show up for scheduled appearances. Since then, no major promotion has been willing to work with her, despite her undeniable skill. She had a brief stint with Women of Wrestling, then faded from public view, eventually resurfacing in a low-key return at CMLL in Mexico. Still in her 20s, Tessa Blanchard should have been at the top of the industry. But due to her unprofessional behavior and unacceptable conduct, she slammed shut the very doors her talent had opened. Her story serves as a powerful warning. Talent might get you to the top, but character is what keeps you there. Which story moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to join Wrestling Sphere on our next journey through the highs and lows of the wrestling world.